Okay, so tonight we are going to do the fourth part of this human relationships, and the last part, so it'll be the final part, and I've called it flying into transcendent mode, because I really think that I want you tonight to connect with something. I want you to really connect with it and try and understand exactly where you are and how you can see your own life. Instead of in a coarse way, in a pure way, it's really important. So I'll start with my usual story, not my usual story, but a story. And the story tonight is called The Goddess of Wealth and the Goddess of Poverty. Once a beautiful and well-dressed woman visited a house. The master of the house asked her who she was, and she replied that she was the goddess of wealth. The master of the house was delighted, and so greeted her with open arms. Soon after, another woman appeared who was ugly looking and very poorly dressed. The master asked who she was, and the woman replied she was the goddess of poverty. The master was frightened and tried to drive her out of the house, but the woman refused to depart, saying, "The goddess of wealth is my sister. There is an agreement between us that we are never to live apart. If you chase me out, she goes with me." Sure enough, as soon as the ugly woman went out, the other woman disappeared. Birth goes with death. Fortune goes with misfortune. Bad things follow good things. And everyone should realize that. Foolish people dread misfortune and strive after good fortune, but those who seek enlightenment must transcend both of them and be free of worldly attachment. Now, I couldn't find it, I was looking for it, but I always give the Disney wives to show this, because this story has an important message for us in the human realm, namely that we are attached to the good and averse to the awful, even in our relationship, and that traps us in our egos, in our personalities, in the five skandhas: form, feelings, perceptions, habits, and consciousness, in our trying to get rid of negative emotion and grasping onto positive emotions and searching for happiness to make us feel good, better, best. How long and how many lifetimes will we continue in our false belief systems, which are in the substantiality of all phenomena, instead of becoming aware of their emptiness? Emptiness doesn't mean nothingness, okay? And then land up suffering so much. Now, I was telling you about the Disney wives, and the Disney wives are hilarious because there was this whole cartoon on all the Disney wives. And so you went through each one, what happened to them when they lived happily ever after. So Cinderella said, "He drove me in a beautiful coach, but now I'm driving a pumpkin again." And Snow White said, "We had such a lovely life, but now he leaves me to babysit the 7 little ones, and he goes out on his own." And Cinderella said, "I pretend to be sleeping." Okay, she pretends to be sleeping. So there's no such thing as happily ever after. In all our relationships, the good and the bad go together. They always are together. And it's time that we really saw that. And as I said to you, I think I mentioned this to you in one of the other previous lectures, that Dzongkar Khyentse Rinpoche, in his beautiful Doha, which is a spontaneous spiritual song, he spoke about this beautiful, luminous emptiness of the great, of our beautiful nature. And he said, in the song, this master said that the beautiful Buddha nature is like an exquisite woman. She's absolutely perfect in every way. But on her little toe, there's a little string attached to her little toe. And that string goes out to her mind, and then her mind goes out to her body. And when it goes out to her body, then it goes out to how her body looks, keeping it in good shape. He says, moisturizing it, looking after the body, hating the body, operating on the body, and then sickness, and it goes out to people and goes out to situation, and on and on and on. And in the song, this master said, if you can get rid of one of this big entanglement of attachments, if you can get rid of one string in a life, then you've done well. No, not me. I can't get rid of one string. He actually said, Samsaki and Jiren, that this body, this hair, these nails, this illness is the coarse result of not being in touch with our luminosity and our Buddha nature. And that's what causes us to have all this entanglement. So we really have to look at this very, very carefully and see it's not nihilism, which is nothingness, and it's not eternalism, which is going to be happily ever after. It's neither of those. We've got to take the good with the bad, and we've got to be able to absolutely let them dissolve. And so before I'm going straight kicking into all the stuff we were doing last time, but I just want to read you this beautiful poem. I once read it to you, but I think it's really worth reading here. It's called The Handwriting on the Wall, the poem. It says, a weary mother returned from the store, lugging groceries through the kitchen door. Awaiting her arrival was her 8-year-old son, anxious to relate what his younger brother had done. While I was out playing and Dad was on a call, TJ took his crayons and wrote on the wall. It's on the new paper you just hung in the den. I told him you'd be mad at having to do it again. She let out a moan and furrowed her brow. Where is your little brother right now? She emptied her arms with a purposeful stride. She marched to his closet where he'd gone to hide. She called his full name as she entered the room. He trembled with the fear he knew that meant doom. For the next 10 minutes, she ranted and raved about the expensive wallpaper and how she had saved. Lamenting all the work it would take to repair, she condemned his actions and total lack of care. The more she scolded, the madder she got, then stomped from his room, totally distraught. She headed for the den to confirm her fears. When she saw the wall, her eyes flooded with tears. The message she read pierced her soul with a dart. It said, I love Mommy surrounded by a heart. Well, the wallpaper remained just as she found it, with an empty picture frame hung to surround it. A reminder to her, and indeed to all, take time to read the handwriting on the wall. It's a beautiful poem, and I think it's very special, because I think when we're so uptight about relationships and when we're so uptight about our circumstances, I think it's really important to take into consideration the essence, the handwriting on the wall, what it's all about, before we actually do very much. So you can butt in at any time, I don't mind, but let's just look in a different way to last week's teaching, because I want to go on to the 5 wisdom and how they relate in relationships. But when we identify with the 5 wisdoms, they're also called the 5 modes of awareness. Very important sentence. The 5 modes of awareness. The 5 Buddha awakened families. That doesn't mean a statue of a Buddha. It means awakened families as opposed to the coarse families that we are living in, okay? then once we identify with that, the 5 wisdoms, the 5 modes of awareness, the 5 Buddha awakened family, then everything changes in our relationships and in our lives. When we identify that we are the skandhas, form, feelings, perceptions, habits, and the consciousness, 5 sense consciousnesses, 1 mind consciousness that labels it, 1 pleasure consciousness that says, it's nice, I hate it, I'm angry, whatever else, and then your liar consciousness in which all the imprints. So those are the 5 skandhas. The negative poisons, the 5 negative poisons, which become 184,000 poisons, okay? The coarse elements, the whole of life. What I feel is the whole of life becomes a court case, defending our ego identities and prosecuting to gain whatever mistaken thing we are craving for or we're craving to be. Either or, with all our relationships, it's a false game to win power, security, success for me and mine. It's so important that you understand this. This is what the whole world identifies with. That's why we can't see the pure land that the Buddha Shakyamuni said, but it's a pure land. We can only see our collective karma, which is coarse. And so I'm saying to you that when you identify with this, or when you identify with the 5 modes of awareness, the 5 wisdoms, the 5 awakened families, okay, it's a very different story. But when we identify with the ego, the wheel turns again, and it turns harder, and we weep, and we suffer. And if we identify with the wisdoms, suddenly it becomes questions like, what enlightened activity can I identify with to enhance this relationship? Now, when we ask a question like that, there are 5 enlightened activities, and I'm going to come to the 5 in a moment because each of them belongs to one of the families. But when you use an enlightened activity rather than an ego activity or anger or defenses or jealousy or anything else, when we use the enlightened activity, there's a different atmosphere, there's a different outcome, and that relationship needs to be completed if it's a difficult relationship. So we're looking at it from a transcendent point of view, and I called it flying into transcendent mode tonight. And then another question we ask is, how can I balance out the pain that this person is suffering? I can't begin to tell you how many times I'm looking with at a person, and I can see how they creating their own suffering. Okay, and I try and tell them, listen, you need to change this. But you know how many people say to me, I can't change this. It's not possible. I just go back to it all the time. And I go, of course you can change it. You can't change it with your ego, but you can change it with your modes of awareness, because that's who you really are. So we're asking, how can I balance the pain this person is suffering? Another question, what more can I do so this other person doesn't get trapped in relative karma with what they're doing to me? So we're not only looking at how we are suffering, but we're looking at what they're doing in order, and that they're going to have all of that. I'm always looking at what people are doing and how much they're going to really suffer. And another question, when we identify with the wisdom, what is my lesson here? What is this that I'm supposed to be teaching? Every morning of my life, I put that cosmic mirror up. In fact, I've got a mirror in my shrine room. I put that mirror up when I look at difficult situations, because what is being mirrored to me? I can tell you that 99%, when you've got a difficult person, a person who doesn't understand you, a person who criticizes you, a person who puts you down, a person who does that, it's because that was your imprint. And this is your lesson. Okay. And we also have to ask the question, what relative karmic imprints am I getting the opportunity to release? And this relationship is temporary. I must complete it. Otherwise, it comes again. Now, I just want to read you two things, two very interesting things, and then we'll go on to the 5. Okay. 1, this quote comes from the sharp Vajra of conscious awareness tantra, that was a slip of the tongue, okay, tantra, that Dajjal Rinpoche wrote about. Now, I've photocopied this tantra, and every day, every morning in the bathroom, I read a paragraph of this tantra so that I really understand what is he trying to say. So I just took a paragraph out when I was reading it the other day. I thought this has to go into this talk. So listen carefully and concentrate. It's only 6 lines, okay? The sharp Vajra of discerning wisdom, that's one of the wisdom that knows how to tell the difference between ultimate truth and relative truth. So the sharp Vajra of discerning wisdom demolishes the mountain of samsara, of self-concepts. Investigate, he advises you, investigate the origin, location, and destination of the name and referent of that which is grasped as the I, me, the root, which is the root of samsara. As soon as you've investigated it, so you investigate it, so you're looking at all the skandhas, you're looking at all the coarse things, as soon as you investigate it, decisively recognize it as objectless emptiness, nothing tangible about it. It's objectless emptiness, and that is determining personal identitylessness. So what's he saying? What does personal identitylessness? I taught you this identitylessness a little while ago. When you are identityless, you're wandering around, you don't know what to do, you don't know where to go, you don't know how to conduct yourself, you haven't got an identity. But identitylessness, that ness, in Tibetan, the word is ni, N-Y-I. That ness doesn't mean you're wandering around, you don't know who you are. It means you have the potential to be 1,000,001 things, but those are only labels. Those are only your identity as you go along in your life. So you have to see that the I, you recognize it, that there's nothing tangible about the I. It's changing and changing and changing. And then you've got personal identitylessness, which means you can be anything. And I watch these wonderful masters, how they are. You know, when the Dalai Lama was accused that time, he made that statement about the tongue of the boy, and it was really in Tibetan culture. But I just saw how he handled it. He just went forward, he apologized. There was no identity of what have I done? How should I condemn myself? The world is causing me grief. Nothing like that. And it's really an excellent lesson. So that little paragraph is really, really, really important. And then, you know, I keep a diary of my retreat when I'm in India. I always keep a diary. So I always write down my own experiences, and I write down anything that hits me in a book. I was thinking I need to go back to India one of these days and just be in that environment again after COVID. We really need it. So I wrote this down. In its simplicity, Jigme Lingpa, who I was busy with all the time, describes us in 3 ways. He says, 1, as human beings, we find the 5 Buddha dimensions eclipsed by the 5 aggregates of body mind, which I've just spoken about, form, feeling. It's eclipses. We let it eclipse because we believe in it. And the second point, he says, the essential clear light is veiled by the sensory fields and karma. And the third thing he says is the vision of reality is obscured by the afflictive emotions. So those negative ego things obscure that beautiful 5 modes of awareness, or the 5 wisdoms that we really are. We can't see them because we are so focused. And I want you all to remember that everything in the coarse and the pure comes in 5s. And so when you are looking at the 5 facets of everything, you look at the following 5. If we're looking at it in an enlightened way, enlightened body, which is Vajra body, it never ages, it never gets sick. Enlightened speech. Later in the year, I'm going to do actually a whole session on enlightened speech because I found the most beautiful teaching on it. I really want to give you that enlightened speech, which is also the use of your energy in a pure way, and enlightened mind. I don't have to explain. Those are the first 3. The 4th one is the enlightened qualities. That's number 4, the qualities. What are those qualities? Love, compassion, understanding, generosity, awareness, truth, understanding, whatever you want to call them. The qualities. When we do any puja or any sadhana, we're developing the qualities. That's the 4th aspect. And the 5th aspect is the enlightened activities. And what are the 5 enlightened activities? They're so beautiful because those enlightened activities come from a compassionate being out. What are they? The first one is pacifying. You can understand pacifying by the mom giving a dummy or her breast or milk to the baby. She's pacifying the baby. That's why a dummy is called a pacifier. Now, how do you pacify a person? You look at where they are coming from. You don't hit them with anything. You pacify them. You calm them. You accept them. That is what pacifying is about. And I'll show you which family, which mode of awareness it belongs with. So pacifying. Second one, magnetizing. Magnetizing means when you are absolutely open to your Buddha nature, you magnetize people. People will ask you, what are you doing? I like what you're doing. Magnetizing is a very strong quality. It belongs to the lotus family, the fire family. They magnetize people into their being, okay? The third one, to help them, of course. The third point is increasing. Increasing. So in increasing, we are serving people, we're giving them what they need. We're increasing everything that they need. It's a very important one. It comes with the earth quality we were talking about last time, because the earth enriches, increases, magnifies. It gives more to. That's what that quality is about. And the 4th quality, the 4th enlightened activity, not quality, the 4th enlightened activity is called subjugating. Now that's like a Guru Rinpoche thing. Never subjugates from an anger point of view. Never punches somebody from an anger point of view. It never comes from ego. Subjugating is, I am stopping you from creating all this karma. So I'm subjugating your activity, but it is done in complete compassion. I've seen a few of the masters really get angry with people, but it never comes from an ego. It's to subjugate, to end all the negativity of that person. And it's really important. And the last activity, which is the last one we get, is called action accomplishment, which you know comes from the Tara, the green family, okay? The family Tara and Amoghasiddhi, and that family, the action accomplishment is when you have those enlightened qualities and you don't even have to think about what you've got to do. It just flows through you absolutely like nobody's business. So those 5, Vajra body, Vajra speech, Vajra mind, Vajra qualities, and Vajra enlightened activities. All enlightened. When we change, that's how we become. When we're not, we take the skandhas, the coarseness, the coarse elements, the negative emotions, and the rest of it. So anybody want to say anything, then we're going straight on to the different families. And I'm going to give you just their absolute, the stuff they did. We have to train with this. And please, if you find, this is hard for me, I know that I studied this a lot and then did the mantras, which I'm really happy to give you, so that I always remembered the mantras of the 5 modes of awareness or the 5 wisdom, because you need to bring this into your being. So the minute you're in a relationship or the minute you're in a situation that is difficult, you relate to it. The minute I'm sitting with a person and I'm counseling them, I'm looking from a transcendent perspective to see what is happening here, what enlightened activity is needed, how can I get this person to turn around and really go on another route, not for my own gain. Any comments, any questions, and then we go straight into the families.
So Mel, what if you try to pacify a person and you try and you try and you try and you try, and they're still aggressive and they're still manipulative and they're still just projecting all their stuff onto you?
Sure. You know what? That is where the whole power of compassion comes in. Okay, because that's where you stop the game. Because a lot of people play games in relationships. And the important thing that you know when it's a game is underneath, you've got and on and on and on and on. It's not the first time you've seen the game. The person plays the game with you. And because you're in a more enlightened state, you get the game. You know the games that people play, like I'm not going to do it now, but I'll give you an example, like the yes, but game, So I'm in an audience, a live audience. It hasn't happened on Zoom. And somebody will say to me, "Oh, Melanie, I've got this very difficult child, and what do you think I should do with him?" Then I'll go, "Oh, well, why don't you try X, Y, and Z?" And then they go, "Yes, that's such a good idea. But you see, I've already tried it. It doesn't work." Okay, then I go, "Well, why don't you try this and this and this?" And then they go, "Yes, that's excellent. But you see, this and this and this." They're a yes, but player. Now that's in answer to your question. You have to cut the game. So when you see they don't really want your help, and now you are becoming the rescuer, you are trying to help them, but they don't want the help, then you just say, "Oh, well, then I think you really do have a problem." You cut the game because you don't go into it. So if somebody's really going on and on and on, being aggressive and everything, and you are using pacification and you are trying to say, "Understand what you're going through. It's really difficult." You're pacifying them and they just go on. And then you go, "Well, I think you need some time by yourself, and you walk out. You don't engage. That's the important thing, that you cut the game so that you recognize it and you cut it out. Because as soon as you get into the game, then it's the victim, the rescuer, the persecutor, and it goes on and on and on, changing all the time, and you have to stop that. So you're able to do that. Like often when I'm seeing a person for a long time and they're not changing and they don't want to, they go on and on and on, then I can feel a curtain coming over me. Then I go, you know what, I can't do any more for you. You need to find this out. You know that it becomes a game. Now, when you are using enlightened activity, you have to be ultra sensitive to what is going on in everything that you're there. Okay. Any other question? Marta, do you want to say something? Oh, okay. So let's look at the 5 modes of awareness tonight and finish them. Then next week we'll go on to something entirely different. Or continue in a different way anyway. Okay.
Can I ask something? Maybe it's in the same vein as what was mentioned in the question before, but like that kind of Vajrapani energy, which you mentioned, the lamas get angry. I've been thinking a lot about that recently, and teachings on that, like guys are talking about that, but I'm not enlightened, so I think that's such a fine line for me to, like, when am I actually like losing my temper and it's actually bad, but like sometimes, like, I think that it started to make sense to me that, always just, because it's also enabling just to be kind sometimes and let people, then you're also enabling people. But like, it's difficult for me. Maybe it's just where I am, just to know, like, where's that line between now you say, like, end of the story, like, this is what you need to hear, and then leave it, not feel too sorry for the people, the person.
You see, I know what you're asking, but what I need to say to you is that when you start to identify, now let me go through the families and the negative qualities that we pervert, as well as the positive qualities. But you see, what's important is you have to be ultra sensitive to when you are helping somebody to create karma. In other words, they're being so ugly and so awful, and they really are doing a lot. And you need to be aware of this, because as I said, you want to stop them from creating a lot of karma and from going on as the way they are. So you have to be really sensitive. And the most important point to be sensitive is when it is repetitive. You see, when it's repetitive in a relationship, then it's usually a game. Okay, when somebody comes to you and they're angry about this and they're angry about that and they're really having a hard day, you absolutely can do the pacification and all of that. But when they are doing it on a repetitive basis, you need to subjugate that behavior. You need to say, enough. I'm not going any further with this. You need to go and contemplate your own behavior, and I'm here when you need me. That kind of thing. But not if it's not repetitive. If this is unusual for this person, then you need to be pacified. Not to say it's okay, but what I always do with people is I just make them close their eyes. I make them see the emotion. I make them see the circumstance, and I make them really look deeply into it. That's how I do it with people, but then I can do that with people because that's what I do, So it's okay, but it's hard if you at an office. But even in an office, if somebody's really losing it, okay, you really can go, if it's not a usual thing. If it's a usual thing, you've got to watch that it's not the game, because a lot of people lose it or become a victim so that people will come and rescue them. And it becomes a habit. They do it all the time. And I often say to people that I'm counseling, you've got to stop this. This is a habitual momentum. You need to stop it now. You need to go on. So if it's a once-off, you could go to them and you can say, I really see that you are having a difficult day. Let's breathe in together. Let's do things together. And you're kind, or you bring them a cup of tea, or whatever the case is, but not if it's on a regular basis. Then you need to cut it. And the way you also tell is, this is not about your ego. This is about watching somebody else's suffering. Now, many times we don't like the behavior of other people, and that's coming from our ego. It may not worry anybody else. So we have to really be clear when we use this. But I think if you are using the 5 families, you start to understand. Let me give you the positives and the negatives of each of the families, and then we'll meditate on it, and then you ask questions. So last week we did the earth, the Ratner family, okay? We did it. I'm going to just do it very quickly because it's on the tape if you want to go back to last week. The Ratner family, the color is yellow, and the element is the pure element of earth. And the male Buddha is Ratnasambhava, and the female Buddha is Buddha Lochana, she's called. It doesn't really matter about the name. And the wisdom is the equalizing wisdom, the wisdom of equality, which means everybody, I told you last time, has a Buddha nature. So everybody is actually equal. We might be in a subservient position, but we are equal. And I always go back to the professor who put in his medical students' exam, what is the name of the cleaner on our level? And they came to him after and they said, you are really joking. Is that for marks? He said, you better believe it's for marks. Because if you're going to be good doctors, you need to treat people with equality. You need to know the name of the person you pass in the corridor every single day. Yes, that's the wisdom of equality. It equalizes everything. And the perversion is pride. I'm too good for this. How dare you do this to me? The wisdom of equality takes that pride that comes from the God realm, the pride, the fall, and the skanda that is associated with earth is feelings. So as soon as you go to the Ratner family, the feelings start becoming transmuted. And what is their enlightened activity? Increasing, enriching, accommodating. That is the enlightened activity. Now, if you have an affinity to the earth element, if you are really an earthy person, a down-to-earth person, and you actually relate to that family, then that is what your role is. But you've got to really understand that the earth element, people can be amazingly hospitable, but they can also be amazingly ostentatious. They can also be hoarding and indulging, and they can have obsessive compulsive activities. I want everything to be the way I want to make me comfortable. And that makes other people suffocate. And we've got to be careful. If you relate to the Ratner family and the earth element, you've got to be careful not to boss everybody around to make it exactly like you wanted at that particular time. You've also got to look at the other person and see, what do they need? And the beautiful is the increasing, enriching activity of the Ratner family is a very, very beautiful activity, and it accommodates. It doesn't dictate exactly what. It's never threatening. When you are in that wisdom of equality, it's not threatening. It's not overbearing. It's generous. But you know those kind of people that go, oh, you must have some food. You must have this. Oh, you like this. Take it. You know, that kind of a person that's over generous and overbearing, and you almost feel very uncomfortable with that. That's when the earth quality is not balanced in a beautiful way. So it is building others, not disparaging them and being patronizing of them. And the Ratner family is the wish-fulfilling jewel. The wisdom of equality is important. And I said last week that eating disorders come with this family because there's too much concentration on things. If you are in the Ratner family, it must be pure, generous offering. No pride. No job is too much for you. You are the one that always leads, that always is there when other people need you. That's how the Ratner family actually comes into being. So let's not use any more time with that because we did it last week. You can get it on the video, but let's go to the Vajra family. The Vajra family is the water element, water, okay, the water element. And the color of the Vajra family is white. And it's funny, you'll find if you have an affinity with a family, you'll find very interestingly that you really love the color of that family. So the Vajra family is white, and the male Buddha is Akshobhya, sometimes called Vajrasattva, and the female Buddha is called Mamaki. She's of the water element. And the wisdom is mirror-like wisdom. So important. When you look in the mirror, here's this angry person. What are they doing here? They are mirroring something to me. Okay, because the perversion is anger, hatred, and aggression. That's the perversion of the Vajra family. And the enlightened activity is subjugation. How do you subjugate? Well, you could subjugate by hitting somebody over the head if you were a master. But as a human being, you better not do that. You could subjugate by saying, it's enough of this. You know, like you say to kids, take some time out in your room. You really need to be by yourself. This behavior is totally unacceptable. That subjugation, we can't do it like Guru Rinpoche. Guru Rinpoche goes for them like nobody's business, but it's all done out of compassion. It's really important. And the skanda of the Vajra family is your consciousness. Now, when you connect to that Vajra family, suddenly the consciousness transmutes. So it goes from being the forms, all those consciousness, the mind, the klesha consciousness, and it goes to being the beautiful kayas and the beautiful wisdoms. The consciousness transmutes as soon as you identify with the water element of the Vajra family. Vajra means it cuts through. And you know, when you look at it, anger is the perversion of the Vajra family, okay? But that Vajra family perceives everything with precision and clarity. No judgments, no comparisons, no attachment, no aversion, no distinction between self and others. The aggression is the negative quality. But when you know there's no ego to defend, then what are we shouting about? Can you get over it very, very quickly? And what you've got to understand is that with water, water can be cooling and beautiful and soothing for people. But water can be icy, intellectual, and cutting like that, can be like ice. So that water has got to be used very, very carefully. You know how people who get angry and then they go ice and they go intellectual and they cut people through like that. That's the perversion. But with that water, you can soothe people, you can cool them, you can refresh them, you can quench their thirst, you can do all of these things with them. And sometimes if you are an earth element and they are a water, pure element, you've got to blend with them, okay? Because the water can't absolutely flood the earth, and the earth can't dry up the water. There's got to be a balance. That's how you balance these relationships from a transcendent point of view. Okay, I'll just give you one more and then I'll give you a chance to ask. The fire element. Okay, now this is the lotus family of Amitabha, which a lot of us relate to. A lot of us want to go in our minds to Devachan. Amitabha and the female Buddha is Pandarasini, and they are called the lotus family. Remember the lotus? Guru Rinpoche is also in the family. Amitabha, Chenrezig, Guru Rinpoche, all in that same lotus family, okay? And that family has got discriminating or discerning wisdom. That's the wisdom of that family. What does that mean? It means you know how to distinguish between the relative and the ultimate truth. You can see the truth. You know, Viam, that would be the answer in what you were talking about. But there are also negative qualities. Well, first of all, the enlightened activity of the lotus family is magnetizing, because people who belong to the lotus family are very, what can we say? They're usually very communicative, outgoing, personalities. They're vibrant, they're alive and everything. And their quality, the enlightened activity is magnetizing people. So people come into their being and they feel good and they feel strong. And but there are also the neurotic aspects of the lotus family, and that is that they manipulate. So they've got this charismatic power, and sometimes they want it to be their way. But this beautiful power has the ability to connect with the world and communicate with the world. They're communicators. Okay, but sometimes they over-exaggerate their emotions, or they're fickle and they get easily bored. My husband's nodding his head, you see, because I always tell him that I identify with the lotus family very, very, very deeply, okay? And so I look very carefully at what are the perverse qualities. The perverse qualities of the lotus family are craving, attachment, and the passions. Okay, those things are the negative quality, and the skanda that is associated with the lotus family is perception, because the discerning wisdom gives you very clear perception into what you can see. You can discern, you can really understand the truth about things very easily. But you have to work with the tendency, otherwise it can be overdone. So the lotus family has these beautiful qualities, but it also has the perverse qualities, and you have to really transmute. I mean, Chogyam Trungpa spoke so much of this. He said, you have to transmute the neurotic aspects of each family and each wisdom. You have to transmute them. So you have to see, which family do I really, you'd find it very easy. I told you when I did a retreat, and we made this whole mandala. I don't know if any of you were there, but we made this whole mandala, and we put the 5 colors, just like this, okay? We put the 5 colors in the mandala, and then everybody, the Buddha's in the middle, and then everybody had to dance into the mandala and find their corner. And it was amazing how people found their family. We also put cellophane over the glasses so that the color of that family was actually, really there. And people just found their way to their family. They knew where they belonged, which was so amazing. It was just an instinctive thing. They had to wander in the mandala and find their place. It came from Chogyam Trungpa. He put cellophane over the eyes so that you saw the world in the color that you associated with. But if you look at this, I don't know if you can see it on the Zoom, but if you look at this, the colors change because the whole mandala is one. And then you can see the green and the red and the blue and the yellow as it changes, and the white. And they all form a whole. But it's really important, because if we know our mode of awareness, then it's amazing, because we know, and remember, fire can warm people or burn people. So it's really important that you understand that. So let me just do the other two very quickly, because otherwise we will, and also with the lotus family, those people who belong to the lotus family often live outside societal norms. So they don't fit in usually with the regular things that people actually do in society. So let's just go to the karma family, which is the green color, okay? And the karma family, which is the enlightened activity, is the action accomplishment. And that is the male Buddha's Amoghasiddhi and the female Buddha's Samayatara. And the element is air. Now, you know if you are an air person, okay? Because an air person can also be airy-fairy, or they can be, they can cut through things very, very quickly. So you have to really look at yourself as an air thing, and you've got to see, because the enlightened activity is the action accomplishment, the green action accomplishment. Martin, it's of Tara. Tara's got the action accomplishment. That's why she's green, okay? If you relate to that, because I know you do that very, very often, then it's very important. But the perversion is envy and jealousy. So instead of seeing that somebody is a little bit enlightened, there's a terrible envy and jealousy in the jealous God realm that happens there. And the skanda associated with the karma family, the air family, is habit formation, your habits. Okay, as soon as you associate with the karma family, the habits start transmuting. It's the most amazing thing, because I do this prayer from Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche every single day. And then you go into each family, and then you see the skandhas all transmuting just like that. Once you associate with the family and its beauty and its action accomplishment and its wisdom and all the things of that family, the perversions, the envy, the jealousy just falls away like that if you are an envious and jealous person. But it's really important, because these people from the karma family can be very, very, competitive. Okay, that air, it's very, very competitive. And air can slice through knots and tangles of confusion and doubt. It's egoless, it's efficiency, it's effective, but it can also be overly energetic. Like when you've got a strong wind, it's overly energetic, okay? And the karma family make great leaders because they have action accomplishments. So if any of you are thinking going into politics, it's nice if you're in the karma family. Those are the good leaders of the world who get things done and who really, really do. But the negative side is that they hold on to territory and want to dominate the relationships, okay? And if you really understand that envy and jealousy, green, when you understand that envy and jealousy, you have to let go of the competitiveness. And the air can blow right through all sorts of things. It can get done exactly what needs to be done in every situation with infallible power to bring it about. It's very interesting. And so the last families, the very last one, actually one should do this over a few sessions because there's a lot to absorb, but you can read up on it. And I've done a lot of these teachings. If you want to go back and get them, I did a lot on the 5 wisdom. So then let's just do the Buddha family. the Buddha family is blue. Okay, the Buddha family is blue. And the Buddha family is space, the element of space. So in the Buddha family, if you are one of these people that is very spacious, you can accommodate everything and anything. The color is blue. The male Buddha is Varoshana. We are on our level, on our land, it's on Varoshana's level, and Akatisvisvari is the female Buddha. And it's called the wisdom of the Dharmadhatu. What does that mean? It means all accomplishing wisdom, because everything can fit into space. It's really important that it does. But the perversion of space is delusion and ignorance. When people tell themselves all these deluded stories, and the skanda is form. Okay, so the Dharmadhatu contains everything. And these people who are spacious, they have a childlike sense of wonder. They relax, they're unhurried, they're magnanimous, they're serene, they have no agenda, nothing really matters. They can be very spaced out though. And also those kind of people are very often loners. They, even if lonely, they'll wait for other people to seek them out before they seek them out. And they lose track of themselves, and they have a tendency to withdraw, avoid, and deny. And they also inhabit a whole life of dreams. Okay, they're big dreamers. So all of these form this beautiful mandala. We have all of them within us, but there's usually one family that we really relate to. And you can tell me now, and then we'll do a meditation. Usually one family that you relate to. And when you're awakened, all the families are in harmony. They're all in the beautiful mandala. And in the golden ages, this is how it is. People are using all these enlightened activities, and they're awakened, and it's a beautiful world. And the perversions hardly exist. In our time, these perversions are absolutely terrible, because people are using much more the coarse side than the pure side. So looking at this, tell me what you get out of it, and then we'll do a lovely meditation using them all. What do you get out of it? Kati, you're listening and you're tired. Tell me what you're getting out of it. What do you think?
Well, I'm just trying to see where I fit in. And I know that you said that the signs, water, air, earth, space, that sort of fits in with our particular star signs. So yes, it can. So I'm just listening to see where I might fit in, really.
What's your star sign?
Scorpio. So I'm a water sign.
Okay, so did you listen to the Vajrayana? And you're quite strong and precise and everything. So did you listen to that? Could you relate to it?
Absolutely. But also I related as well to the last one as well, the space one, because I've always got a lot of room or a lot of space for other people and their opinions and their ideas and who they are. So I was got between the two, really.
Okay, so look at them and discern. Look at the enlightened activities of both of them, you know, because it's really important, because discriminating or discerning wisdom is wonderful. Because with that Vajra, you just cut through, you can see the truth about things. And then you know Vyam, you know how to behave to people, because it's very clear to you what they're doing. But you have to learn to adapt. You have to learn to see where other people are coming from and how they are. They don't always see it like that. But I can assure you that if you use the enlightened activities, people respond in a beautiful way. There's no doubt about it. Anyone else have anything? Jade, can you only belong to one family? Look, one family, VM, is what you would belong to. But as I'm explaining to you, you've got them all in the mandala of your heart. And when you come to the bardos, see, this is the interesting thing. If you are not able to recognize the clear light straight after at death, then you come to the bardo of Dharmata. And there are the Buddha families in all their colors, with all their entourages. I mean, that's what we call the 100 deity mandala in our hearts. And so they present themselves. And for most people, it's absolutely overwhelming. For you guys, when you get to the bardo of Dharmata, you're going to say, oh, I'm watching the beauty of my mind, the 5 families. And if you do relate to one of the families, you will automatically go to that family and be liberated. There's no doubt about it. That's why this is so important. That's why I spend such a lot of my time working with this mandala in my heart, working with the 5 modes of awareness, working with them. Every day I say the mantra, Om Varajana, Om, flood us with your beautiful wisdom of Dhamma Dhatu, and let all those poisons of delusion and ignorance be transmuted. And then Om Vajrasattva, Om, or Om Akshobhya, Hum, flood us with the mirror-like wisdom, please, and let all the anger and hatred be transmuted. And then I go, Om Ratnasava, Om Ratnasambhava, Tram, flood us with the wisdom of equality, the yellow, please let all the perversions of each one of pride be gone. And Om Amitabha Hri, flood us with the discriminating wisdom and allow all the craving and attachment and the passions to be transmuted. And Om Amoghasiddhi Ah, flood us with the action accomplishing wisdom, clear out any envy or jealousy. Now, I do that every day in the shower. And I do it a lot of times, you know, so that I'm really totally familiar. I play with them so that I really understand in my heart those Buddha families and what they mean. And so that when I'm looking at relationships, I'm looking at me in relation to this person and what does this person need? And how can I see that I am putting that activity into them? Do you all understand what I'm saying? It's like a different way of life. It's a different world. Marcel, you look deep in contemplation. Okay, Eugene, I know you've heard this before, the Buddha family, but it's really important. Layla, Damika, Jade, Patricia, Marion, Eugene, anyone, die. You okay? Eugene?
Yeah, so I'm water, but I think I'm actually much more air and Amoghasiddhi. So
Okay.
very action driven. And yeah, so I think it causes jealousy in others and in myself sometimes. So
Okay.
yeah.
That's very, very good if you could recognize that, because remember, the sign that you're born under, the more you get enlightened, the more likely you will be born under a sign which is the same as the Buddha family. But a lot of people are still working through on a relative level that stuff that comes with the zodiacal sign and not with the Buddha family. But remember, the Buddha family, we can still pervert those things. So it's really important, you know, it's really important to understand, where do I fit? What do I feel? And then to read up on these things. But I've given a lot of teaching on them. You can go back and get those talks easily, you know, from Nadine, or I'll tell you to put them onto the YouTube. And then you can look at them, because it's really important. Layla, did you want to say something? Please.
Very strangely enough, this afternoon I was listening to the 5 main traits of personalities, the big 5 of
Okay.
conscientiousness, agreeableness, and one thing my takeaway from listening to that, as well as this one, is to be aware of the dangers of kind of projecting, because you assume everybody is like you and should be like you. And you don't think that, well, we're different along a different spectrums, different now families. So for me, I think it's just maybe a humility a bit, like we're quite different, and I mustn't do that. I mustn't project like I'm the right, how I think is the right way. So that's my takeaway from the kind of 2 matrices, I guess, if you can call it that.
No, because the one is the earthly, not earth element, but earthly, the physical, egocentric, relative terms. That's what you're listening to. And what they're trying to do in that is to give you some very, very thing. Now, if you looked at something like your first one, conscientiousness, I mean, that's such an interesting thing, because conscientiousness is usually being conscientious about thinking everything out and doing it in the correct way and all of that. And in Buddhism, we would say that's a mind activity. It's so interesting because, conscientiousness and those kind of things come with the ego. Now, here we're actually throwing the ego up. The Buddha said, is there nothing there? No, there's something, but it's not what we think. It's not a solid I. It's not a skanda that's a solid I. It's actually many, many, many different things. So it's lovely if you can incorporate the human qualities and still see these Buddha qualities or these awakened qualities. It's very, very interesting. But you need to play with these, everybody. You really need to play with these very much, because otherwise you won't, you've got to get to know them very well. Read your notes, read up on them. There's a beautiful book by Francesca Fremantle. What was it called again? I'll tell you what it's called if I've got them here. Francesca Fremantle, I can't think of the name, but you can Google it, Francesca Fremantle. It's a very, very good book on all the wisdoms and everything else. And she was a student of Chogyam Trungpa, and he loved all of this stuff. But let's do a meditation. And then if anybody's got anything, I'm very happy if you text me and you ask me for anything that you want. You need to think about it, and you need to see, where do I relate? What is it? Fee, did you want to say anything?
No, I'm okay. I'm fine.
But when you look at these things, once you understand them, then you understand you in relation to other people. Because for me, yeah, it's so clear that I fit into the Lotus family. It's very, very clear. From day one, I've always fitted in with the Lotus family. But I read a lot about the perversions and how they can be. And I can see over the years that I've changed a lot of those perverse qualities because I've understood them and understand how those are not the way that families, that mode of awareness is supposed to be. It's really important to understand that. And that's how we change, and then we change in our relationship. So let's just do a quick meditation and then we'll end. And then if any of you have got any stuff you want to know, I did a very long one on the 5 wisdoms when I was doing one of the Monday morning one, and you can get that if you want to watch it over when we have a break. But I think it's enough. I don't want to give you too much that it drives you absolutely mad, but just let's sit for a moment and just breathe in and breathe out. And I want you to actually just go into your hearts for 1 minute. And I want you to think of the mandala of the 5 families. I want you to really just ponder it, all 5, and their beautiful colors: white, blue, green, red, yellow. I want you to see all the colors of the rainbow right within your heart, and the mandala in your heart. And when we are awake, all of them are in harmony. All the enlightened activities are in harmony. All the wisdoms are in harmony. We need the wisdom of equality for our humility and to understand the sameness of the Buddha nature of all beings. We need the mirror-like wisdom to see into the mirror and what is being reflected for us, the white Vajra family. And we need to see the perversion, anger and aggression and hatred. And when we turn the mandala around, we see the yellow Ratna family, the jewel family, with their beautiful earthly offerings in abundance. And that earthy quality, which is so beautiful. And we turn and we see the green karma family, which the perversion is envy and jealousy. And the karma family is real action, accomplishment, swift. And it's very, very, very beautiful, that spontaneous activity. And the Buddha family, blue in its spaciousness, in its pureness. But the perversion is delusion or ignorance, when we're not right tuned in with it. And I want you to think that the potential to use these awakened qualities in all our relationships. And just imagine a pure land, a golden age, and how everybody is caring for everybody else. Everybody is accommodating and enriching and reaching out and understanding. And everybody is serving each other. And imagine this beautiful, pure land of a world where we can go straight after this incarnation, or right now within this incarnation. Feel that mandala in your heart and play with it and bring it to your recognition. Each of the awakened wisdoms, modes of awareness. And the next time you're in a very difficult relationship, I want you to just ponder, look at the person, try and see where they are coming from, try and see why they are there and what you need to do to help and serve, and also for yourself to learn the lessons very quickly. So we're going to leave it there, these relationships, and we'll do one more session next week, and then we'll close for a couple of weeks. And if anybody wants to ask me anything, you really, really can. But it does take time to really work with these. It's like clay, you start working with them, and then they go round and round inside you. You know them backwards, forwards, sideways. And you can make a little chart for yourself. I like to have a chart of the element, the family, the color, the male and female Buddha, the wisdom, the enlightened activity, the perversion, and the skanda. And if you've got that, that's very, very easy. I mean, Fiona can make a chart and give it to you, but you have to just be careful with the charts, because Bernice always makes charts of the 5 Buddha families when we're doing them. And then everybody's going, oh, this and this and this. And then it becomes too heady, not enough feeling about it. And I prefer it if you feel each of these families. Okay, so everybody, I'm going to stay for a few minutes after, just in case people want to ask me. But let's dedicate for all sentient beings who are suffering and all of those who are in very difficult relationships, and for all of you as you go along. May there be light, may there be a change from the coarse elements to the pure elements. May all people be able to relate to each other, understand each other, and may the world be full of these modes of awareness and wisdom. Through this merit, may we achieve all-seeing Buddhahood, and thereafter, once all harmful enemies have been defeated, may all beings be liberated from the ocean of existence, stirred by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe dranam pamshene cheganachi balak tropaye sipe sole doa do warsho. Oh.